All right, so welcome everyone, and welcome back for many of you. We're having another online meetup. So we actually have, I should have said, 3 lightning talks now because Arthur volunteered right as we were starting. Let's see, but we've got, oh, of course, now it's too big and you can't see what it says. All right. Noorah Alhasan of the Austin Meetup is here. Actually, we got a whole bunch of people from Austin today. I stopped by and said hello to them again. I think it was 2 days ago. It's a lot of fun going to, now that everything's online, going to other Emacs meetups is a lot of fun, and I encourage people to give that a try. And so some of them are paying us a visit today. And Noorah is one of them, and she's going to give a talk on org mode at some point. Noorah, is your video and microphone working? I see you're there, but I haven't heard you yet. Maybe she's in the chat window. I've got 10 messages in the chat window I should probably look at. Sean Farley, who's not here yet, has
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. I'm sorry, I didn't see. I didn't check. I'm glad you're here, Sean. He's got something cool to demo, he says. So I just called it something cool. So we got like 3 things here. Does anyone want to go first? I guess it's Arthur or Sean.
I can go. I'm ready.
Oh, okay. Was that Sean?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's.
Oh, okay.
Sean.
Yeah. All right. Then let's hear it.
All right. Let's see. Let's try to share the screen. All right. Okay, infinite recursion. So can people see my screen?
I can.
Yep.
Okay. Great. So one of the things I use Emacs for quite a lot is email. What you're seeing now is mu for E. It's the Emacs client I use. There's a few others, not much. But first, it's pretty awesome. One of the things I like is the speed. Okay, so I can search for Meetup for the last month. Here's all the emails I got there. Okay, so far so good. But of course, if you're using Emacs for email, you may get, like, this one is an all right formatted. Like, Meetup seems to have cared that their text looks okay. But a lot of people who send email don't. They just send an HTML version of it. A good example is this 2 chairs. It's a mental health kind of like checkout package that I signed up for. Theirs is just a blob of text. I can't read that at all. Okay, so there's a few options you can do here. You can open this in a browser. So Mu has that built in. You can just open it up here. Let's see, it's gonna spawn. And there we go. It looks a little better. Of course, it's HTML, but this suffers from something I'm very, very passionate about, and I absolutely despise. One thing that this email has is tracking built into it. So when you open it in a web browser like I just did, it notifies that I read that email. And I'm not really cool with that, especially since, like, if you were to check this on your phone, it would automatically block images or actually everything external. One of the neat things that is in modern Emacs now is, of course, X widgets. So I can view this email without leaving Emacs. That's cool. But it suffers from the same problem. It's loading images that alert, that I open this email. And so what I did was something very scary. I dove into the C part of Emacs, and I added some new functionality. What is that? Where is it? we go. So this is a bunch of lists that you don't need to know or anything like that, but I made a new function that allows you to pass in what's called content rules for blocking content. And this is built into WebKit. And it's a string of some JSON. I just looked up the format. But I made a function that you can pass in a string. I built a helper one. Let's see. And now I'm going to advise this mu function that displays it in an X widget. I'm going to say, well, substitute my X widget functions instead of the regular go-to URL. And so you can go back here and I can, again, display this. But it's going to be a little different. It's going to be no images, right? And so that's pretty cool. Like now I can view it in the format if they use CSS and sent that, right? It all looks okay. It just didn't dial home. And so that is something that I've been working on for the last few weeks. Let's see. We can go back to the Meetup one and test it there. And indeed, like no one's profile photo is showing up here. It's just the HTML and if they include a CSS. So anyway, so if you're using Emacs for email, unfortunately, since I had to, you should try this out. The downside is, of course, I had to muck around with C, which means you'll have to compile it yourself. So yeah. So right now it's in a state of it works for me. I'm very happy with it, and yeah, that's pretty much all there is. So go back to here and stop sharing.
So you advised some Lisp code with some C code that you wrote?
No. The advice function was just pure Lisp. Like I didn't have to advise the function at all. I could have written my own.
Okay, but you did write C code for this.
Yeah, I had to because the WebKit is of course C, and I had to pass in a string basically. So you are wondering how to pass Lisp strings to C strings and vice versa. I recently dove into that. It's very scary for those that know C. But I'll post the in the chat. I'll post the. I don't know if I'm still sharing my screen. Am I?
No, you don't.
Okay. So yeah, I'll post the URL to the repo that's containing my branch. It's built on top of the native compile, since I'm also experimenting with that. But I think it can be rebased if you want just if you want it on master. Right now, yes, and of course, a huge caveat. Right now, it's macOS only because that's the only thing I have, and don't really know GTK X widget, or not X widget, but the WebKit stuff. I don't know how they want that string. Ideally, though, it would be very copy pasta of just formatting the string however they need it and sending it to the X WebKit.
Sean.
Yes.
The question. Do you use mu for mailing lists?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I found like there's a.
Oh yeah, I can turn my camera on.
Small thing I did. You can, based on message ID, you can find messages in mailing list. And some people use mu for Gmail, and you can also using message ID. I'll probably post the snippet into the chat. Okay. I'll find it somewhere.
Is there a question in there, or?
No, I'm just saying that that's something useful. I do with mu.
I mean, so my entire time for maintaining Mercurial was all in mu and applying patches from mailing lists.
Oh yeah, I remember you wrote a package that shows the syntax highlighting inside the.
Oh yeah. Oh shit, I did. It's one of those packages I forgot about. Yes, you're right. To colorize the patch diff.
Right.
In the text view, yeah. but I hardly read patches through mailing lists, although it is my preferred code review.
You should do a presentation on Mu.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Like,
and we can compare with John Wigley's workflow and GNU's.
Yeah, I never tried GNU's. I tried not much for 2 years, but then I went back to Mu4e. Mu is my kind of style. Although they're implementing, I think you can now use the GNU's view function on the mail, still within Mu. But yeah.
Is Mu faster than not much? Is that why you preferred it?
No, not much is just too opinionated. It's just fast as not much. I mean, they're comparable. Not much doesn't sync folders, right? Like it forces you to sync their tags, which is not understood by other clients. So when I'm on my, like the one time I'm on my phone, it would like my inbox is still messy, right? Like it didn't sync all the archive or folder. Mu is actually what I want. And I don't use Gmail, by the way. Since I self-host, I just want simple IMAP folders and then context search.
Yeah, it's tricky to set up Mu with Gmail. I still have suffer from some quirks I don't like. Something like you delete a thing, it goes to your trash folder, but then it shows up as unread email. And it shows up in your trash folder, and there's probably ways to do certain things better. I don't like that you cannot collapse the threads. You can. There's some somebody wrote it, but it's an open issue in Mu4e.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the one feature I guess I would miss. I forgot. I'm so used to it that I forget that others do it. Yeah. I agree with that. But like syncing with Gmail, like I found out like Gmail throttled my account just because I knew some Google people to ask. Like apparently what I was doing every time I would run sync, I would try to sync the labels, and it would just like query all 200,000 messages I had. Like they did not like that. So yeah, but anyway, so just a simple IMAP is all I do.
And what's your mail provider?
I self-host.
Oh, you self-host, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you were talking about how liberating yourself from liberating.
It's quite liberating. In fact, I got to speed up when I moved away from Gmail. And it's quite nice. I handcrafted a mail server, which I this year ditched and switched to Docker. And it was a nice transition. Mail Cow, I think, is the project. Just a bunch of glued together Docker images.
Send a postcard to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. Like
don't use email. She's not gonna answer.
If you can't tell, like I don't want. If I'm someone who hosts my own email, I definitely don't want privacy trackers to alert that I opened the email.
Absolutely.
I would love to hear more about self-hosting your email someday. I keep thinking about doing it myself, but I hear so many horror stories about people's mail not getting delivered.
Okay, so I just went through that. It is a nightmare if you. Okay, so one, I'll just rant that I fucking hate IPv6. Good God. Like no one implements that correctly, or like the tools don't understand it. So my tools, these online checkers are like, oh, your domain looks good. Like your email looks good. Did not include the IPv6 checker. So FYI. Yes, once you go through that once, it's fine. You become less scared of it. And it would just randomly, I would get flagged as spam, and it was an easy fix in my DNS records. So I'd say it's easy to test out. Just get a VPS and try MailCow, and don't import any old emails. It has a built-in importer, which I just let run overnight, and that was it.
Sorry, which system was it?
That was when I was finally ready to make the switch. a male cow. There are tons of other options. This was just whatever. It seemed nice. And I didn't want to, I forgot how I set up my dovecot and postfix so many times that I was tired of forgetting. So I just put this all in Ansible and was done with it. But yeah, we can have like self-hosted topics one day, like how I sync my org files. Spoiler alert, it's Nextcloud.
Would anybody be interested in the snippet I wanted to share? How to like find certain messages from the mailing client? In this case, specifically from Mew.
Sure, man. Yeah, go for it.
Let me share my screen. I forgot where. Oh, here it is. Screen 1, I think. Yeah. All right. Everybody can see my Emacs?
Yep.
Dark or light? What's better? Dark, I guess, right?
Yeah, they kind of look the same to me. So.
All right. So here's the function. I mean, you can. So basically, what it does, you grab the mailing list ID. So there are certain message fields, right? In here in Muir message field. It's just a list. You grab the mailing list ID, you grab the message ID, and then some pattern matching. So there's like, if it's in GNU.org, then it looks it up like this. If it's in Google Groups, it looks it up like this. And it's basically browsers.url, whatever like your browser URL is set to, which is pretty handy. I mean, like you can go, like if I go to Emacs, I don't know. I hope it's not broken. I haven't used it like in a while. So pressing A, and it's find in mailing list, and it opens it in the web client of the mailing list. So that's basically it. Okay. I'm gonna share it in the chat.
Yeah.
There's another thing I do also, since I use Gmail, right? You can also find this thing in Gmail. So open in Gmail. It uses the same trick. The problem with Gmail, sometimes Gmail takes like long time to open. You can look it up like this, like by you grab the mail, the message ID, and look it up in Gmail, like just like that. The problem with Gmail, maybe they fixed it now, but sometimes it takes too long to open the second instance of Gmail. And I wanted to go a little further with this. And if you already have a tab with Gmail open, you don't need a second tab of Gmail. You can find it somehow. So anyway, that's it.
About your snippet, what makes it different than the list search operator?
List search operator? What's a list search operator?
So Mew has a few operators, right? Author, subject, for the queries, and they have a list operator, which you can just say the list, and it will find messages in that mailing list.
Really? I did not know about that.
It's like fairly recent, I guess, like maybe 2 versions ago, something like that.
Okay.
Like here, where's my Mercurial one? Anyway.
I'll share the snippet anyway, but here. It doesn't want to share in the chat.
Maybe
it's too big. It's too big.
Can you make a gist or something like that of it and share the link?
Oh, sure. So here's how I do the gists. So select this function, create just the region, and here it is. Boom, boom, boom. You can even give a description. Find a message in a mailing list, right? Update, and here it is. And then I can share it. Where is it? Here. All right. I still can't. Wow, the chat is not working for me. I can't post in the chat for some reason. Maybe because I'm sharing. No? Wow, I cannot post in the chat. I don't know why.
Maybe refresh.
Oh, here you go.
Yeah.
It worked.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Sean, and thank you, Ag. Do we want to move on to the next lightning talk?
Yes, please.
All right. So Noorah is joining us. One of the nice people I met at Emacs ATX. I'll put a link in the chat to their meetup group. They're like lovely people, and she has a presentation. Am I right in thinking that you're a PhD student at UT Austin?
Yes.
Yeah, and so she's got a talk on using org mode for, I guess, writing for kind of non-programming purposes, and take it away.
Thank you. Like Jeff has said, I'm a PhD student in public policy, and I only started learning about like Emacs and org mode maybe a year ago. There was a lot to learn, and then I sort of like plateaued now. So now I'm only using the stuff that I need to use in Emacs instead of using everything there is in Emacs. Let me share. Okay. So again, I started using Emacs about a year ago, and I mostly use it for org mode. As well, I'm guessing everyone knows what org mode does, but in a nutshell, this is my workflow using org mode. I use it for planning my research, note-taking, and reference management. Also, like the quarters that I use, and for ways to use it for literate programming, although I don't use org mode much for literate programming.
Forgive me, if someone's typing. Could they mute themselves, please?
Sorry. So yeah, this is my workflow. But in terms of the literate programming section, I haven't been finding Emacs helpful so far, especially with ESS and R in particular, but maybe if I work on it more. But right now, all I'm using is RStudio and R. Okay, so I use the org files, well, for my writing mostly, and I export them as either TeX or doc or Word or HTML. And for org agenda, it populates all my to-dos and appointments in a singular view. And like by a show of hands or something, how many of you use org mode? Because I don't know how slow or fast I should go. Can everyone speak? Just so we can discuss this that way.
Maybe it's easier to
Sure.
doesn't use org mode.
Okay, because I don't know how far I should go deep into it or not, but I'll do it the way I did it last time. Shad remembers because I've done this presentation before. So yeah, with my org agenda, like it populates all the to-dos and appointments, and I also track some habits that I have. I've shown a screenshot up there. In particular, I just set up my agenda as a daily view with appointments and deadlines and a simple habit tracker. But you can also customize your agenda using the org agenda custom commands. And there are like a ton of tutorials out there that help you with that. But the one I found like really nice is org super agenda. And they can automate it by categories or by priorities. And it's even more customizable that way. So for people who are looking for a planner solution in their workflow, I highly recommend Org Super Agenda. I also use Org GCal. I'm guessing a lot of you are not using Gmail anymore and would think like this is blasphemous that I'm using Org GCal in Emacs, but it's helpful for me, especially if I want to link it to my to-dos with my emails. So that's one package that I use with org. The org habit tracker is the one that I had fun mostly, just because of the way like I could color like in my org agenda and it makes it look fun. And then with to-dos and tags, I'm guessing all of you are familiar with the differences between deadlines and scheduling, or not? Anyway, so one of the ones that I really like with the to-dos is the org inline tasks. So sometimes it's like using headers as my to-dos is really annoying, especially if I am working within a section or a subsection of my document and I would need a to-do like within my text. Using org inline task really helps with that. I believe that the trick in org inline task is that they use like a 16 or 17 subheader. So like 16 stars and it looks like it's within a document when in fact like it's still a header. Where did my, okay. All right, this is sort of like from my config of the way I set up my to-do keywords and sequences. I have it as like either to do, or I start a task, or I move it to someday, and I have maybe. I'm always on the maybe side. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do it, maybe not. And then just switch the sequence for either done or canceled. And for my tags, I'm usually using the no export in my writing because sometimes like I would like to include sections, and other times like if I want to export it to like to print it out, I want to leave some sections out. So it really helps by just saying attaching the no export tag for if you want to export it later. All right, so to-dos and tags can also be specified by buffer. So it doesn't have to be like in your config file. You can do it within your org file. As you can see here for my like dissertation proposal org file, I wanted specific to-do types like either write, draw, or like table and graphs, and like exclusive tags as well. So I would have like either a notes tag, which also is unexportable. I've sort of done it in my config. So that's one way. All right, with properties. Properties are really important in org mode, especially like by using the ID and also like export specific sections. So like you can definitely export a subtree of your org file into like a PDF or Word rather than exporting the entire document itself. And I haven't included like the types, but it's usually the same as the file level options. Instead, it would be like export something file subtree. All right, so yeah, this is an example. If I just wanted to export my theoretical model section of the entire proposal, instead of like, you know, taking it into another org file, I would just export it from that subtree specifically by using the export file name. Okay, so another properties drawer that I've used is I would like to differentiate here between the habit and the regular to do. So to invoke like a habit style of to-do list, you just use the style, and it would log every time you complete a habit. So for example, either recharging my watch every 4 days, 3 to 4 days. That way I can keep track of when to charge my watch. All right, and org clocking, I don't know, maybe in your guys' line of work, I try to do like a clocking my tasks. That way it's sort of like a self-accountability thing. I fell out of that habit, but I have other sources of accountability, such as like a writing group where like I check in every few days, and I think that helps me. But I've seen people that use org clock to like really get on top of their tasks. And it's a good way, it's a good habit to have, to just like estimate how long something would take you and just track your progress. All right, org room. This is the new thing that came out, let me see, I think maybe 7 or 8 months ago. And this has definitely changed my entire way of conducting research and writing and literature review. It's a method of note-taking. It's called the Zettelkasten. This German sociologist, he like started this whole thing, and if you guys are interested in the book Org Room, oh, my camera is not on, so you won't. But it's How to Take Smart Notes by Sonke Arens. Highly recommended if you guys need to do some research. But and then so I mainly use Org Room for my literature review. And I use their org room server to visualize my notes into a network. So for example, in the center, that's one of my sources that I've been like reading and taking notes on. And so what I do is like I link other concepts to it, and and each link is an org file of its own, but it has, it's linked to other org files and based on like tags and tag words and keywords. So that's how I use it.
Noorah, question?
Sure.
Is it okay to ask questions, or you prefer them to like?
Yeah, please. I'd rather
answer them at the end.
Interactive person than
okay.
Just to.
Sounds good. Have you, like, before getting into org Roam, have you tried org research, Roam research, like using their website first, just to get the concepts? The reason I'm asking, like, org Roam is kind of hot right now and it's pretty good, but it's hard to change the workflow you kind of got used to, and I don't know where to start. Should I try org Roam, like, oh, not org Roam, like, but Roam research itself first, get the, like, get familiar with the ideas, how things work, the backlinks and all that, and then, like, try to use org Roam and go through the configuring it, changing my workflow and stuff like that.
Right.
What do you think?
Okay, so for me, I did read on Roam research for a bit, and then I didn't use it, so I didn't have a huge database that is already built in Roam research. And like, I just got lucky that org Roam just started, but I was like at the beginning of when they were building org Roam, and it was so basic, but it's gotten so much better, and I love it. I really love it. Like, I'm a huge fan. I'm on their Slack channel and their Discord channel, and I just keep up with them. But they're doing a lot more now, like to a point now where they're using transclusion of text in between buffers, and that's something that Roam research is already doing, but now org Roam are building on it. I highly recommend just getting used to it, because with Roam research, the thing that like really put me off is that everything is saved on their server. Like, you can't have like save your folders or like your files locally, and I think that's what made me like really just be patient with org Roam and work through it that way. But right now I'm really happy with my database and my workflow.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, are you?
Have you tried any like org mind map, like the kind of predecessors to the org realm hotness?
Yeah, I tried org brain.
Yeah.
That was one that was included, and I think at that time I didn't learn much about like org IDs, and so I was getting really confused, and I just gave up on it after a week. But now it's fine. But yeah, like org-realm is still working a lot better for me, and like now that they're working on the transclusion part, because like if you see before, I was including like org files for each subsection, but now like I could just, so for example, what I would like to do, like let's say in this network, I want to talk more about like climate migration. And so if I have already a file that's already open, and it would be having like maybe 2-3 paragraphs of just me explaining climate migration, my thoughts on climate migration, and I just want to include it in one of the subsection in my master folder, my master org file. Transcluding just the text alone would help me so much. Instead of like, creating a new file, which I will call it, my theory file, but I'm not sure what to include in my theory file because I have ideas that are all over the place and I just want to combine them together. So transclusion would help me more because at that point, I can edit both in the transcluded section of the master file and in the original org file, and it will sync together. So this is what they're working on right now.
Interesting.
Does that idea make sense of like what's happening?
I think I need to see it to really.
Okay, hold on. Let me find the link. No, it's on my Slack channel. Let me just open my Slack channel. Here we go. Okay. They have just started with that. And I'm really definitely super excited, but this is what they're talking about with transclusion. I've included the link. Because the thing with org-realm, it's all about like sort of like decentralized thinking. And so each org file is an idea that you build on. And you just link it to your other files, and it creates like this whole network of ideas. But the thing that I am like running into, the problem that I'm running into is like, okay, how can I combine them all into a single, cohesive document? And this is like where transclusion is a solution, I think, in my opinion.
All right.
So what next? Org captures. Org capture. It's also something that I use a lot, and I think it's one of the strongest things in org mode, where like you could just capture your to-dos or notes or appointments on the fly, and it's I find it great. Does anyone use org capture?
Yep.
Okay. All of you use org capture. Okay. And org-realm does have a built-in org capture templates, especially for example, like I have my references linked, and so I can create a new org file for each reference that I have, and it utilizes org capture in the back end to create those new org files. So these have been helpful. Also, my favorite package, like in org mode, is orgnoter. I use it extensively, again, for the literature. And it's just an org file per PDF file, and I could just write my notes. And then I use org-realm. So for example, any keywords, any concepts, I would just be linking them to their special org file that talk about that single concept.
Are your main machine Linux machine?
I'm on Windows.
Oh, Windows. Wow, that's interesting because PDF tools works, I think, better in Linux than.
Yeah, I mean, I switched to Linux like over the summer, and then I just got tired, and I'm like, okay, I'm going back to Windows.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's just there are things where like I needed for Windows that were more helpful, especially now that I am teaching. A lot of folks are using Office and Office 365, and I just didn't want to, install Wine and go through the whole thing.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I'm opposite. I, whenever I try, I give it a try. Like whenever I get a new computer which has Windows pre-installed, I'm like, I'll give it 2 weeks. After 45 minutes, I'm like, no, I can't. I just can't deal with this. I
Yeah.
have to install Linux.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely tried, but it's just, I don't know.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the environment that I'm in is just makes it easier to be either on Windows or Mac or something like that. But,
Yeah, that describes my experience with Linux. Although you use much kinder words than I usually do.
yeah.
There's also OpenOffice. I don't know if you've tried that, but it used to be pretty good last time I tried it.
Yeah, I've used OpenOffice and everything. Like I've gone full Linux, and I was doing okay, and then I can't remember what happened. Like my laptop was crashing. It was a nightmare. But I'm like, okay, I'll just stick with Windows. I'll give it a try next year when I have less things on my plate.
Yeah, I think I gave up on Linux when I couldn't get my sound to work. But
Yeah. I have two things with Linux. 2 words like Bluetooth.
Yes.
That's.
Oh my God. My keyboard kept unlinking. It drove me nuts. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. God. We're really frustrated. So this is OrgNoter. OrgNoter is great in terms of like if you have a PDF file that you want to take notes on. And the thing that OrgNoter does, it would scrape headings and copy them into your org file. So if you've already annotated on the PDF originally, and then you just want to copy all of those annotations, all those highlights, even the content itself that you've highlighted, OrgNoter would like just copy it all and into your specified org file.
How do you organize your PDF notes? Is it like file per PDF, or like it's a single file and multiple notes from like multiple PDFs?
Well, when you invoke OrgNoter, it would ask you, do you want it to be in this org file that you just started, or do you want a new one? So my recommendation is just have an org file per PDF. Like just don't mix things together. It's easier to organize. It's easier to find later, especially with, is it Helm that uses, or like Deft or stuff like that, it makes it easier later to like sift through your notes rather than having everything in one org file, which then slows everything down, and you just don't want to have that headache in the long run.
Okay.
Yeah. Next, OrgGraph. So when I started with Emacs, I did use OrgGraph, which is like a reference management tool. Now my workflow is through Zotero. So I use Zotero. Well, just one question. Is anyone here in research or like uses Zotero and reference management, or like you guys are just, because I can skip this part.
I don't use that, but it's a bit on purpose. But a lot of my colleagues do.
Right. So Zotero, open source reference management, fantastic. I use 2 different plugins to create the workflow, which links my Zotero files, my Zotero master bib file with Emacs and OrgRome. And so like my workflow has gotten better like over the years, so I'm pretty happy with it so far. But yeah, so what I start with is like I use Zotero to collect my references, which then it populates into a master reference file, and then I use it through OrgRome and OrgRome BibTeX to conduct my literature review. So that's the whole workflow. I should diagram this workflow.
Do you mean you use it for reviewing papers or reviewing your own literature?
For reviewing papers and any sources that I use, yeah. So a lot of my research right now is like on secondary sources, and so it's a lot of reading and, you know, analyzing that way. Like if you're ever doing what's called desk research, which is basically just reading and, you know, analyzing, then yeah, this workflow works amazingly well, especially if you deal with a lot of PDFs. Anything with PDF is fantastic. So yeah, it started with OrgGraph, and then with OrgRome, I think a lot of people that were using OrgRome were also in research and just in general. So they built on top of OrgGraph and Helm BibTeX and BibTeX completion. And OrgRome BibTeX right now, it's really great to a point where like they have a PDF scraper that will scrape all the references within a PDF and just link it to your specified org file. That way you have the references of the reference. That is if you want to go deep into something. I think it's helpful. That way you can understand the logic of each work, academic work. All right, so finally, well, not finally, we have the exporters. As we all know, like the default ones are the tag, PDF, ODT, and HTML. Other backend org exporters are like Ox-Pandoc that I use, Ox-Reveal, and Ox-Hugo. Reveal is for reveal.js, and then Hugo is for your blogs or websites. That's sort of like a, okay. Now OrgBabel. I tried so hard to get into literate programming in Emacs, and I mean, I only use R. I use Python sometimes for my work, but it's just like RStudio and R makes it so easy to learn, so easy to. It really streamlines a lot of the work, but with, you know, OrgBabel and in particular ESS, I still have time sort of setting up the whole system for it to work seamlessly like RStudio, but it's just, it's not working right now. And like now RStudio, you can implement Python snippets in your markdown file, and so, you know, they're winning the game basically. That's it. I'm gonna stop sharing, and if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
That's really cool. Thanks.
Yeah, I used like OutNode for years, and then just this talk totally blew my mind. So much to learn.
Yeah. It's not just writing a document or a report and just like things of what you did. Like there's so much. Like implementing to-dos and priorities and then linking them to your org agenda, I think has helped me a lot, because like if you have, you know, if you're in a project with a really complex project with so many things going on, you want to be able to see everything in one place. And so org mode helps doing that with the integration with agenda and to-dos. Yeah.
Noorah, question. Can you share your capture templates? I have a specific question about your node capture template.
Let me open it up.
So the node capture template, does it create a heading, or it how do I think I need to rephrase my question. So there is a feature in org mode. You can create a note, add a note to a heading, right? I think it's the Control C, Control Z, if I'm right. So what it does, it adds a note to the logbook. So basically, it notes the time you adding the note. Is your capture template does the same thing? Like,
no, for me, the note is to link, sort of, it creates a link from the place I was working in, and it would capture like a separate note in a separate file.
I see.
Yeah, that way I can review my notes of the day. So like, let's say I'm working on org file A, and I had a note in my head that I want to go to it later. I would just capture it, and it will take it to inbox. I think I have it as inbox.org. Yeah.
So the note I'm talking about, it's useful for especially during like meetings. You can I think there is also like you can create a note to a currently clocked in task, which is great. Like you can like, it adds the time, and you can say like, during the meeting, you can say like, oh, like Jeff said something, and like it notes the exact time, it puts it in the logbook, you can like make the note. This is great. But I was looking for, at some point I struggled to make a capture template to make a note on specific heading, like, if it would, like, if it's possible at all. Anyway, I thought like maybe this is something that I'll like, something like that in your capture templates.
Wait, let me just open my config. I think I have it in here. I just want to make sure. All right, here we go. Let me share. Okay, so here, what the note does, so let me highlight like this. It captures a link of somewhere. I forgot what it is. Is it delta? Is it like the %A? That captures the link? Yeah. So it really, it's just the basic one where, undated time, and then where I was making the notes out of.
Did you remove your journal?
Did I move
There's no journal? In your presentation, there is also a journal entry, but I don't see it here.
Yeah, no, that presentation was back in March.
Okay.
Again, my laptop crashed. I got a new PC, and then I just switched to Doom Emacs, and I'm like, do I want to do this journal thing? Forget it. Like, I've been, what is the expression? Just making it leaner. So it's just like stuff that I need instead of like all the extra gadgets and distractions.
Right.
Yeah.
We do that all the time.
I know, the tweaking. Oh yeah, it's nonstop.
Yeah.
Would you mind showing how would you capture in the org roam kind of mind map, the infrastructure? How would you go about inputting? Let's just say like I sent you a link, right? Like and to yourself, you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like I'm gonna read this later, or maybe not read later. That's a bit wrong, but like this webpage has some information that I want to say, right? Not just the text, but I also want to say where I got it, what time I got it, in the real org way to do that. How does that fit into the Roam? Like,
well, the thing is that, which is I haven't set up, you use org protocol. So it's like org protocol is linked with like, I think org capture. And that's when like I had problems setting up org protocol, especially because of Windows issues. Like same thing with MU4E. I tried so hard to set up on Windows, and it was a nightmare. I was able to.
It's less about the org protocol and more of like, how does that nugget of data or whatever go into org roam? Like, I guess in your workflow.
Well, let me, with websites, I can't do it right now. Well, maybe I can, but it would be like a copy paste and it'll look sloppy. But the workflow that I have it like really nicely automated is usually like, a journal paper that I found and I want to start taking notes on. So for example, let me through my master.
Recording is on.
So let's see. Let me try something I don't have a note on or something. Let me see if this works. Okay, so like clicking on tab will give me these extra options, and I would just go to edit notes using like Orm BibTeX. I already have a template that will populate all this information and create a new org file just for this this piece of literature, right?
Okay.
Oops, God, I'm still getting used to. All right, here we go. So over here, like I have this. Oh, again, let me fix this. Oh no, I think it froze.
Yeah, I had a nickel for every time that happened.
Yep. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I have to. Well, basically what I would do is like I would start taking notes, either open the PDF by invoking OrgNoter, and I start taking all my notes. Within taking the notes, that's when I start linking to other stuff. Gosh, this is so frustrating. Okay, it is working.
I see. I guess I see. Like, as you're, let's say in my case, like I'd be perhaps copy pasting some whatever information I want from this website, making my notes or thoughts or whatever on that, and then at that point, that's when I would start keywording or whatever, linking it to other ideas.
Right. So one thing that I like about it, so for example, let's see this multi-level perspective keyword. If I highlight it, I already have an org file that talks about the multi-level perspective framework. But so I want to link this literature to that file that I've been like already populating with my ideas, with my analysis, and other literature that I want to link it to. So let me remember. So NRI, which is org insert. Now, if I go here, I have the MLP, which is the multi-level perspective. And so it creates a link to that. And as you can see with the org over here, in the next buffer, it tells you like if there are any other org files that you've linked it to this file. Since this is new, I haven't worked on any other files that would, that would cite this paper, for example, or any references. But if I click on multi-level perspective, I haven't taken any notes on this, but as you can see on the backlinks here, it will give me all the stuff that I've been working on that are related to the multi-level perspective.
Okay. Yeah, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So that's the power of OrgRome. It's just your ideas, like you can see them then. And then if I open, hold on, let me see. Can I switch the share? Let me stop sharing. And then just show you my OrgRome server. Let's see if it loads. Oh no. Huh. Oh, here we go. But let me, oh, oops, that's not okay. Let me try this one. Here we go. So see, this is org Roam server. Basically, this is my entire database of org files that are linked together. Let me open this. So it's built, let me zoom out just like that. What you can also do, like if I click on, for example, let me see, where do I want to go? Here. This will automatically open when I click on it in Emacs. But what I can also do is like the buffer network, you can just focus on a single node and it will tell you everything else. And then in this file viewer, I hope it works. I really hope it works. Yeah, this is not, yeah. Yeah, I'm having problems with, yeah, it's okay. But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that looks really nice.
Yeah. So yeah, this is what I've been working on in Emacs.
That is really amazing. I really feel like I learned a lot, and I'm super glad we're recording this because I'm going to have to go back and like go through each slide again. There's a lot of good material in there. Thank you.
Right. I think the tough part is just like trying to find out what works for you in terms of a workflow specifically. Because like with this is something I would present to graduate students who are just starting, you know, with their research and stuff like that. I think that would be really helpful, but I don't know what it would be like for, you know, professionals and in other sectors, like how that would be applicable.
Have you seen any of John Wigley's org mode presentations?
Maybe like a long time ago, but right now it's just.
No, I really enjoyed his, and I feel like yours is like right up there in terms of exploring a lot of the nooks and crannies that that other speakers don't go into. So
oh,
really helpful.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a lot of learning to do, but I think with Emacs, it's just because it's so customizable, it's easy to go down a rabbit hole, and it's easy to like do things that really don't help you. Like for example, my org capture, the journal, like I rarely use, like I haven't used it. I could just like say, oh, alt, you know, meta X and org journal, and it creates a new file for me. So I don't need to capture it in a sense.
Yeah, I find that just from my completely small sample space, most of the videos I find on org mode are task management, which is cool. Mm-hmm. Great, org mode does that super well. But I also use org mode for data collection, and it's hard to write like that's where the mind map or the org roam really helps out. Is to
yeah, and I yeah. I mean, if you have a small database, I think just like your regular org ID could do really great. So like if you have like a lot of subheadings and stuff like that and you want to link them together. I've also haven't shown like org refile, which is like you can refile certain subheadings in certain orgs and move them to another org files.
I use that all the time because all the tasks past their deadline, I have to refile.
Yeah. So just moving them around.
Awesome. Any more questions for Noorah? No? All good. Wonder if we should move on to Arthur.
Sorry for taking.
I think you're muted though.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask real quick, how much do you end up using the sort of graphical visualization features of Roam?
Sometimes like when I want to go to a certain buffer and just see like what else have I been looking at before, or like to look at what connections have I made so far between buffers. or like org files, that's where I look at it. I'm like, oh, I somehow made a link between these two concepts. Let's see what's going on there.
Cool. Thank
Yeah.
you. So should I start with my, okay. Yeah, so I'll talk briefly and then show. So I'm the editor of the scheme requests for implementation, which is kind of the RFCs for the scheme programming language. So the basic idea is I get documents in from people who want to make proposals for improvements to the language, new data structures, new control structures, that kind of thing, new operating system interfaces. And they send me HTML in a particular, that follows a particular template, a document with, rationale, an abstract, a specification, a description of the sample implementation and stuff like that. And then, I kind of massage it a little bit into the completely standard format and then put it up on our website for discussion and so on. But because I'm getting HTML from all kinds of people, some of it generated from other languages that people prefer to use, some written directly in HTML and so on, the quality of the HTML varies quite a bit. And I spent a lot of time just trying to make sure that it's valid HTML. And so I used to use the W3C HTML validator, which I'll show you guys now. Let's see. Let me just pop it up first. Okay, so I will show that now. Chrome tab. All right, so this is the HTML validation service, the markup validation service from the Web Consortium. I can choose a file. Let's see. And sorry. So I'll pick the most recent Surfy and I'll check it. And well, because I already ran it through the validator, everything looks good. But if I make some mistakes in the document, like, let's see what I can do here. I'll just add a random foobar in the document. You won't see this quite yet, but you'll see it in a second. So I've made 2 mistakes in it. Now I'm going to upload those again and check them. And you'll see, so I made a CSS error and I made a matching error with H2, with sections, or with headings in the HTML. So this works very nicely. But when you're working on a lot of documents and you're making a lot of changes to them, and the ones that come in sometimes have a lot of errors, the path of uploading it to the website, using it, specifying the file, looking at the results, going back to the input file, finding the error there based on the line number, fixing it, and then sending another version of the file up to this website ends up getting kind of tedious. So I wrote my first Melpa package, my first package that I published on Melpa called Validate HTML. And all it does is it just takes that particular, I'll show you my Emacs here. Sorry, I need to pick Emacs. Okay, so all it does is it takes the document. So here's, for example, the document I was just showing you, but in HTML form. And if I say metax validate HTML, now it shows me in a compile mode buffer on the right the errors. And just like you always do with compile mode, Control-X backquote or whatever you've got bound to it will take you to the line with the error. And if I do Control-X backquote, it'll take me to the next error. So this error is actually easier to see. Oops. I'm highlighting the line manually. You can see that the H2s were not balanced. So if I fix that and then say validate HTML, now I don't have to go upload to the website manually, etc. All I have is one error left, and I'll fix that error as well. and everything will be good. So that's all it is. It's just a simple service that ships it up to the Web Consortium's site, and then shows you the results in a compile mode buffer, which you can go through very quickly, and which, it takes you directly to the line where the error is, rather than having you manually find it yourself. Yeah, so I've found that extremely useful for the amount of HTML that I'm editing raw these days. And if you just search the package list on list packages, look for validate-html. All done.
That's cool. I've been very interested in compilation mode lately, and I discovered that it has that kind of ability to let you customize and, in fact, even define your own derived mode that's sort of derives from compilation mode. Is that how you did that one?
Yeah, that's right. It's surprising how little you actually have to do to get that much working. I started with a page and a half of code, and then just kind of gradually compressed it down as I figured things out into really, more comments than code, and some, not quite, but it's really using what exists already in compilation mode rather than writing that much new. Just the little tweaks I had to do to make sure that the text was formatted in the compilation mode buffer in one of the many ways that compilation mode supports, right? So the text that I get back from the website, when I ship it to their website, there's an option that says, give me back the results in JSON. So I get it back in JSON form and then turn it into one of these standard compilation mode forms and push that into the buffer. And then compilation mode takes care of everything else, parsing it and making the connection between the line in the buffer and the line in the original buffer and all that stuff. Yeah, so it was really a pleasure. Like a lot of times when you dive into Emacs, there's an enormous amount of infrastructure you can already rely on.
Did you use a compilation filter, or was it just strictly the hooks for like identifying line numbers and so forth that are already there? Exactly. Only what was already there. I didn't have to really do very much. Let's see. Hang on a sec. Yeah, so let me pop this up, and you can see that it's really not that much. I'm more excited about it because it's my first contribution to Melpa after I've used Emacs since 1984. So I made some contributions years ago, but never through one of the package systems. So yeah, it's basically this one function here in the middle. I just wipe out I make a new compilation buffer rather than using the standard one called star compilation star. I clear it out. I do a post using the standard URL methods that Emacs has. Actually, originally I was calling curl, and then I realized, well, Emacs has got this built in. I'll just use that. And then, yeah, I just go through all the output sequence do on each of the messages I got back and format each one according to this standard template, and then put the buffer in compilation mode and tell it and set the variable that remembers where you were last in a compilation mode buffer to this particular buffer, so that when you hit Control-X backquote, you won't go to your previous compilation mode buffer, but to this one instead. That's it. But like I say, this started off as probably 50% more code than it ended up being. I need to do this more often now that I've done it once. I was super impressed by the Melpa process. They have thousands of packages coming at them now, and they have a very organized way. They have all these templates that say you have to do exactly this and exactly that, and run exactly this test, and make sure you're in this format, and so on. And then when you make your submission, they have a checklist that you have to fill out, a little form that says, I have done this, and I have done this, and I have done that. And the very last item on the checklist is, and I have checked everything on this checklist without reading what I was checking. So you're supposed to leave that one unchecked. It's kind of
test to make sure you're actually reading what you're saying you've done. But yeah, and they turned it around in just a few days, probably because my package was so small. But basically, I didn't have to do anything serious other than just add a license file. But that was it.
Yeah, have you thought about running this locally instead of sending it to a server?
Yeah, in my case, there are two reasons I didn't bother. The first is everything that I do on Surfy is all public. So every version of our documents is always, we don't do everything completely transparently in the public sphere. So, I do edit some HTML myself that is not public, but the vast majority of it is. So I don't really care. And then the other thing is, it's a big pile of Java, and I don't really want to install. I'm feeling particularly bad about Java these days, not because the language is so unpleasant, but because of the owners now, and in particular now with the Oracle v. Google going to the Supreme Court. I've actually worked for both of those companies, but I'll tell you, I'm rooting for Google because Oracle is basically trying to change the law through the Supreme Court so that we can no longer implement other people's APIs anymore. So I just don't want that code on my computer.
That is completely fair.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It was fun.
We did a really good job on presentations this time. We tend to have like one or two that are like 5 minutes long, and then we sit around and just chat for 2 hours. So this is really, really good.
Well, my advice is when you have 3 presentations, you should keep one in your back pocket.
Not
next time you have 0.
I didn't even do one this time. Sid, what are you up to? Are you doing some new stuff?
Well, I haven't done any new Emacs stuff in a while. But I did see your tweet about EmacsConf yesterday, so
right.
I made a submission to it. I don't think they'll accept it because it's too late. It's past the deadline, but we'll see. Could be an incentive to do some more Emacs hacking.
Oh, that'd be awesome. No, I think they had to postpone the deadline by a day, by a week rather. So entirely possible that they'll be very happy to see your submission. I mean, if any of you have something in mind, I think that I would probably go ahead and send it in anyway. So.
I mean, I've been really thinking about the whole org mode for researchers, definitely for grad students, I think, but I don't know. It needs to be refined more.
Well, you've got time. I think it was quite good already, and you'd probably be happy with it. Yeah. So I would go for it.
Heck, I think there's a book there. I mean, it's really like 5 or 6 talks in your one talk. So if you expanded all that, it would be a pretty decent book, I think.
Oh no.
Speaking of books, Noorah's recommendation for the Zettelkasten, the note-taking book that was
yeah.
I read the free part on Google Books, the introduction, and I really liked kind of the philosophy and stuff they were talking about that, and that was kind of a little bit motivating to me.
Yeah, I mean, it really helped me because, when you have so much information, it's just hard to make the connections if you just want to do it all at the same time. But yeah, it's a really great one.
Well, what do you say is your?
Yeah, my original talk was I wanted to do org mode for soccer moms, but because of the whole task management and organization. So
I'm glad you focused on the research side, actually. I feel like I've seen presentations by John Kitchen which were focused on writing, just like generating scientific papers.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, because we're all programmers, a lot of literate programming kind of stuff. And then I thought John Wigley's thing was focused more on like task management, but yours was the first one I thought really went in depth on the whole thing about being a researcher and tracking ideas and information. And I thought that was a real unique thing.
Thank you. Well, this is encouraging. Now I'm excited.
Yeah, submit.
Yeah, you guys mentioned EmacsCon, so I went looking for it. I'll just let you know, it is not the Customer Experience Conference, which is also called EmacsCon. The first Twitter entry says, "Looking forward to speaking at EmacsCon. Love hearing from and engaging with experts on how to improve customer experience."
Wait, is it completely unrelated to Emacs?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, they show people in vans delivering food. I mean, it's just not the same thing. So I put the correct link here once I found it.
Yeah. Anybody got any good stuff to talk about? Let's see what Satya's talking about. This always helps.
I will say I do use, I should have mentioned this earlier, I use Mu as well, and I found it really quite nice, but I don't use it for sending email anymore. The combination of labels in Gmail and trying to send HTML email sometimes with, just simple things like indentation and unordered lists and stuff like that was just too much for me. So I just use it kind of as a way of doing quick search because it's way faster than Gmail search. I'm embarrassed to say as a Google alumnus. It's also a great way of doing a backup of your Gmail, which is, I think, a good idea to do just in case. I mean, Google's not going away, but they do make people's accounts go away sometimes.
True. Alternate things. There's org message mode that I disable because I despise HTML emails. But you are, if you really want to like kind of try to get back on that horse, you could try that package. You write in org and it exports to HTML.
Yeah, none of those things works properly actually. But I have a blog post, at least in my experience. But I have a blog post where I figured out a way of writing a buffer in org mode, and then I have a command that basically exports it as HTML that's just the right format that you can paste into a Gmail buffer.
Okay.
Or on Mac OS, it formats it as a rich text format buffer, paste, and then you can paste that into your Gmail, and then it comes across great. And I also used to be someone who didn't want HTML email because mostly spammers are the ones who send HTML email the most, right? And so I kind of did guilt by association. But actually, it's been very helpful for me in the Sophie scheme work because I can put a link in the buffer and the link works. I can have a list, for example, of Git commits and have them really look like Git commits indented and everything. I can quote someone and have the quote indented. Just simple stuff like that makes things a lot more readable. Without adding, animation and images and all that kind of stuff. So I've kind of converted to just, 0.1 HTML, not full-on HTML.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, okay. Not much to reply to. When I was at Google, I was just an intern, and I was working on open source stuff, so didn't have to go through a lot of hoops like that.
Has anyone done any collaborative editing? That's a thing that sort of caught my interest on Satya's update.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly curious.
Yeah, I mean,
CRDT, something called CRDT, whatever that is.
Yeah, so that's basically a technology for allowing people to make changes to, in this case, documents independently, offline even, and then have them merge predictably so that you don't need a central server. You can just, as long as you can ship everyone these these deltas that are constructed in a very particular way, you know that once everyone receives them all, they will result in the same document.
If only we had some kind of tools for diffing and sending distributed, I don't know, version controls of documents.
It's like that, except that it's with diffs,
I'm being
like for Git, at some level you can't be guaranteed that you will get the same result, and so someone has to do a manual merge. With CRDT, if it's done properly, it always comes to the same result, and no manual merge is required. But there are strict limits on what you can do, what you can express.
Isn't this what Wave was supposed to be?
Yeah, Wave was built on this idea.
It was the same. Okay, all right, fair enough.
And Google Docs as well. As well as a bunch of other things that are not Google. It's just those are the ones that come to mind.
Well, academics will find a way to make it crash somehow. Their diffs are going to be very different.
What? This is the first I've heard about it in Emacs. Very cool.
Has anyone used, I was just thinking about Sean's work with the C code. Has anyone done any experimenting with the I think, is it called modules? It's like the dynamically loadable code for Emacs.
Yep.
I messed with that like a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure what to do with it other than show that it works.
I'm writing a project that uses that.
Oh, cool.
It's pretty neat. I mean, I didn't know if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know.
It's you load a library. That's it.
No, I want to know about what your
it's very
project.
straightforward if you're writing in C or something that can export C symbols. I was experimenting with Swift. I know I hate myself for saying that, but I wanted to call some Mac OS native library accessibility API stuff and bridge it with Emacs. And so as long as you export simple C symbols in your shared object, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, but then you have to worry about strings. Strings are always, in my experience, that's what defines interoperability amongst the language. Like how easy or how much of a pain in the ass is it to pass a string around and manipulate it?
Yeah, I was kind of curious about the uses of that feature, and now I can see like having to like there's stuff that's just not available through a cross-platform API, but you still want to get that information, and other than creating some kind of server that will tell you about it across a network connection, you probably have to do, or shelling out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that has its own problems. I found that it's quite slow and brittle, obviously, right? The reason I'm doing this at a C level or whatever, low level for the OS is I want to register a global hotkey for all Mac applications that calls an Emacs list. So this is like Hammer Spoon if you use that on the Mac. Basically, I'm rewriting that in Emacs list. But yeah, wouldn't that be cool, right? Like I can org capture in my browser and just have it pass it that way. You can do this now with org protocol, but just you could also do it with C and this kind of stuff. Or here's a harder one. How do I get the selected text out of any Mac app? Well, the accessibility API has a function call for that. So you could call that, but you have to be you have to call that somehow, right? Or bind it somehow.
Can I submit C code to Melpa?
Now you have a problem. Theoretically, yes. That's what PDF Tools does. But I hope your package is self-contained C and doesn't rely on anything else.
Does C actually go into the Melpa repo and follow some sort of C rules, or do they just say you have to have the following prerequisites?
For what do you mean?
You said that PDF Tools has C and is in Melpa.
Yeah, it just like all they do, like Melpa doesn't really care. It just tells you what files it needs to download, right, for that package, and then PDF Tools shells out and calls make and find. It needs to find popular, some other C libraries or some other system libraries for image and text manipulation of a PDF. And yeah, it just shells out. It's hard coded for Homebrew. I remember I added Mac support once, and I don't know if it works. So it's very brittle, right? Like, the more you rely on external packages being in a system, the less likely, right, you're gonna have the clean and nice experience.
So does anyone have any experience with doing some kind of rich text format in Emacs? I know Stallman, has wanted that since, I don't know, the 80s, but it's never really quite happened. There is a rich text format that does bold and italic and so on, but nothing more extensible than that. The reason I ask is org mode is kind of trying to be both a pure text format and something more, right? So there are all these packages that turn 3 stars into indentation levels and links into, double square brackets into links and that kind of stuff. But it would be really cool if you just had some format underneath. I dare say XML, but maybe JSON or S expressions. I'm a Lisp guy. That then got reflected on the screen in whatever programmable way you wanted, and therefore was more extensible, etc. But I've just never seen it, and every time I look into doing it, it seems impossibly hard with the APIs that are there now.
Yes. I don't know. Like the most recent I dug into that personally was Emacs master branch now, 28. Because they have turned on the Cairo text rendering or glyph rendering. I don't know the terminology of like
the Harfbuzz for ligatures.
Right. Yeah. So for my itch that I was scratching was, of course, ligatures. And theoretically, though, you could do fancier stuff, right? Like the whole highlighting text and changing the font, kind of what other editors do. I clearly don't use them, but yeah. I think you'd hit the C rendering code real quick, right? My gut feeling is that because of the way the windowing system works, it's just another terminal. That mindset really painted like limitations. That's my guess, though. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether this means a rewrite.
Join the plethora of Emacs rewrites, right? Like choose your favorite language. Yeah.
When I was in college, I had the office right next to Stallman, and just down the hall, the MIT Scheme project was developing Edwin, which was another clone of an earlier version of Emacs, right? Because GNU Emacs that we all use is not the original. Mm-hmm. And the one for Scheme was, more of a functional implementation. It was very clean. It had real data structures, whereas Stallman's kind of opposed to data structures in general. But his won. And that's where we are now. Sometimes I feel like I should go back to that old code for Edwin, the scheme, the Emacs clone back there, and try to bring it forward. It's just that there's all this code, right? Org mode and PDF tools and a million other things. There's just no way to do it anymore.
Do it, man. Or join the it gets brought up every 4 years, the Guile Scheme Emacs, right? Or Guile Emacs, and then maybe write stuff in Scheme.
Yeah, what's happening with that?
You've got to have an eLisp interpreter, right? So no matter what you do, you've got to have to be able to run all the eLisp. So I don't know, does Guile have any mode for evaluating eLisp?
Yeah, it has a eList backend, but
yeah, they actually have one that's apparently fairly good, but I think work has kind of halted on that.
Yeah, it gets picked up like every few years and then dropped. Someone wrote a speed test this last year, I think, within the last year, that compared the speed, and maybe the Guile Emacs is semantically correct, but it's very slow, and it doesn't call other things. I forget, there's some limitations. Maybe it's process shelling out. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know Guile actually has been improving in speed quite a bit because they've put a Andy Keep. Not Andy Keep. I'm sorry.
No, Andy
Wynn. But anyway, they've been building a just-in-time compiler and that kind of stuff. So it's been getting a lot faster. The funny thing is, this Edwin version of Emacs that I used all those years ago, written in Scheme, was way faster than GNU Emacs because everything was compiled down to native code by the MIT Scheme implementation. So, well,
I've used Edwin. It still works pretty well. It just doesn't have the features, of course, that GNU Emacs has.
Yeah, it's way back in the dark ages now.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's really cool to think like, wow, there's an Emacs out there that's totally written in MIT Scheme, and that would be really cool if someone grabbed that and tried to. Maybe it's too much, like too much of a mountain to climb, but it's cool to think about.
There's so many mountains that were worth climbing. I'm not sure that's the one I want to climb.
That's fair.
Like, I'd also like to write an email server and an email client and so on. But even that seems like a big mountain, too much.
It's kind of a sad state of like, how do you semantically, or by that I mean correctly, render HTML in a modern age, right? Like we have rather WebKit, but that's kind of cranky.
I've actually started using, how do you pronounce this, EWW or U in Emacs to view a bunch of pages. And it's surprisingly good. It's and actually generally faster than Chrome, basically because it doesn't do anything. There's no JavaScript running, etc. But and there's actually a nice key. If you press capital R, it tries to find the important part of the page and show that to you, rather than show you all the junk at the top of the page with the navigation and so on. And yeah, it's pretty usable for a lot of sites.
It's like a reader view. I think it's basically their attempt to do what Firefox does when you click the little icon in the corner. So yeah, it works pretty good.
Yeah, for reading document or navigating documentation, and for sure. It's just like it's all of these solutions they're nice when they work until they don't work, right?
Right.
There's always that like corner case or whatever, some website, whatever, right?
Yep, that's true. And unfortunately, the definition of work right now is works like Chrome, Firefox, and Safari.
Very true.
Right.
And,
yeah.
I brought up EWW or text browser supported Bitbucket. That was laughed out of the room.
Yeah, so regarding the HTML, is that because, I mean, it's not because the HTML spec is incomplete, but it's because there are all these ill-formed pages out there that we expect to work. Is that right? Trying to handle all the malformed?
Modern web pages are written in React and require JavaScript, and that interacts with CSS, right? It's no longer HTML. Right. It's the 3.
Right. Okay.
And even just HTML is enormous now. Although, I mean, the specs do specify what to do in each malformed case, pretty much. So they almost all interpret the same malformed code in the same way, that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, but I think that malformed
huge, hard to re-implement.
Vanishingly small in practice, but I base that on nothing.
Oh, what was that?
Okay.
I think like having bad rendered from malform or like whatever, like what I would say is 90s HTML is vanishingly small. The more important or the tougher things to do are the interactions between JavaScript, CSS, and HTML together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, EWW, I don't think makes any attempt at CSS, which is part of the reason it's fast.
Yeah. Maybe just like the basic, like I'm not even sure it does that though.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for organizing this. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Oh, no problem at all. And good to see you again, Arthur, Sid, Sean, Young-Il, Kat, Noorah, Leslie, Shad, and someone I don't know. But yeah, it's always a good time here in Emacs land. And let me just make one more pitch for going out and finding the other Emacs online meetups. There's friends everywhere.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I'll drop in on the Austin.
And thanks so much to everyone who presented today. It was really good to have you all. And,
I have a question about the Austin meetup. It's really online because in the meetup page appears that is in person.
Oh yeah, it's the place where we meet has been shut down. So yeah, it's going to be online. We just need to update that. We're not on the ball too much these days, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But it's the first Wednesday of every month, so please drop in.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, me too.